I'm a crier, you guys. That one. Whew. He's something special. Hey, everybody. What a privilege it is to be here. We follow two amazing plenary sessions today, Rick Donlin and Jocelyn Petway. Come on. And as Jocelyn said, it's a privilege to be on this stage. My life has been changed by words. We talked about Dr. Perkins and Steve, but there are also people like Susan Post and Katie White and a whole list of other people who have spoken up here who have changed my life and changed our lives. This is where God speaks. And so I want to invite God into this space. Now, I told people earlier in the workshop that we did on theology of mental suffering that if anybody that starts to hang around me for a while will start to see a little bit of my MO. My spiritual gift is the gift of delegation. I don't know how to do anything, but what I know how to do is to find people who do. And I'd like to invite our panelists up here tonight. We have a fantastic group of panelists who are going to go up here, and we're going to invite you into some spaces tonight. And so while they're coming up here, give them a hand. While they're coming up here, I want to tell you a little bit about how we set this up, because we didn't know each other at the beginning of this when Rick asked me to come up here and talk a long time ago. And so we had this group that we had to bring together who didn't know each other, were in different states. And, thinking about sort of, this is 2026 after all, and everybody uses PowerPoint. And, I've seen Rick use PowerPoint so effectively. He's funny, and I've never been able to achieve anything like that. And then here's Jocelyn yesterday, and I'm thinking, at least she's just gonna, just speak. And then PowerPoint. So we're like, okay, let's try. We got some PowerPoint Gen whatever Alpha Gen Z in here. Let's just try it. And so we said, okay, so we're gonna start simple. We're gonna take our pictures, and we can use AI, right? And I asked Alejandro to make me a little bit thinner, a little bit, whatever. And so this is what we got here, guys. This was our. Who's the dude with the beard? Just put him in there. And why has Alejandro's ethnicity changed? Like what? So we're not doing PowerPoint tonight. So then no PowerPoint, and so then it's like, okay, so what are we gonna do? And again, following I was, hey, maybe I can talk about my alma mater and when the last time we won the basketball championship. Well, when it was when the Wright brothers made their successful flight at Kitty Hawk in 1903. Thank you. But we did learn something last night that we're gonna use to sort of shift over into this moment, and that was lesson 2. From Jocelyn's talk. Does anybody remember what lesson 2 was about hope? She said, if you want to have hope, you must also have community. And one of the things that happened over the course of us preparing for this talk over the last several months is we started off as brothers and sisters in the Lord, which is critical. But I think something happened and we became friends. And we became a community. And so we're going to invite you into this space. And these folks, we know. Try and tell me the second best lecture you all ever heard in high school, the second best lecture you ever heard in college. You probably can't do it. How do we learn as people? We learn from stories, don't we? So these folks are going to become vulnerable tonight for your sake and for the sake of the kingdom, and invite you into their stories, because we're talking about fear. Fear not, right? Fear not. And so we're going to try and explore those times in life when the ground has seemed uncertain under their feet. And we're going to invite you into those spaces and hope that you can connect a little bit, and then we're going to try and bring it home and see sort of what lessons God has taught us in this. So I would like to introduce our panel and invite you into this space. First, we have Alejandra Caballero. She is here as a board member of CCHF. She is a registered interpreter for the Supreme Court of Oklahoma, and also the patient services coordinator at Crossings Clinic in Oklahoma City. Next, we have Daniel Song. Daniel came to work with me. I first met him in 2013 when he applied to work as an intern We're going to hear a little bit of his story, but he's currently a MedPeds trained physician. In fact, a lot of really incredibly brilliant physicians were trained here in Cincinnati. Daniel and his wife, Flo Shao, I could not believe. We are so privileged. People talk about what Lawndale's like. You know why it's so special? Because of the people that God brings there. Both the providers, but also the folks that work in our EOC department and everybody else that works there. We are so privileged. And so when Daniel and his wife, Flo, came back, they're residency faculty, MedPeds physician. He's in charge of our inpatient service. And so we're so privileged to have Daniel Song on the stage with us tonight. And then finally, Dr. Louisa Oloshoga. Dr. O trained, at U Chicago and Northwestern, and it was, again, that she came to Lawndale is just a miracle in and of itself, and yet she is the director of our psychiatry program. She serves in our homeless population in the shelters where she meets folks where they are, and she is going to be the future director of our future psychiatry residency program.
Don't applaud that.
Amen. What's wrong with that guy? Okay, and we're actually gonna invite Dr. O to open us up and talk about some times in your life when we're talking about fear and sort of how this thing played out in your life.
Yeah, I mean, first it's such an honor to be able to share, and my confession here, I was saying in the earlier workshop, I make a lot of confessions when I talk, and I think it's just because it makes me comfortable. My confession here is I don't like actually being vulnerable. I'll hold your stuff all day, but to sort of be in this space to talk about fear, this is a really important, so we're gonna do our best here. As I've reflected on the past few months about fear and how I deal with it, my system is pretty simple. I make a plan, and then I do it, and then somewhere along there, I ask God just to make sure we're on the same page with what I need him to do for that plan, and I drive it into it pretty incessantly, and sometimes I'm so scared, I don't even make a plan, I just jump into the do, catch God up later, and I gotta say that has gone terribly for me. Like it's gone so poorly that you would think at this point I'd have a different method of operation, and I mean, God's working on me too. But when I think about just fear in my life, one of the biggest things that comes up is this undercurrent of fear that I have always had. And it's this fear of not being able to reach my goals in my timeline. I have this idea for myself, this thing that I want to do, and I can't get there, and I can't get there in time, and just this gripping fear that things are going to throw me off course. It was that same fear that sent me spinning when first year of medical school, I became unexpectedly pregnant and found myself on the phone with Planned Parenthood just to walk me through that process because I can't get thrown off. And so by God's grace, I had that beautiful girl, and med school was an extremely challenging time. But that fear drove me to my next plan, which was we were gonna plan our second pregnancy, my husband and I was gonna take a gap year between my last year of medical school and my first year of residency, so that way I could be pregnant and have a baby. And I felt good about that. I'd calculated the time, it wasn't gonna throw me off so much, it was working well. I was really settled in it. But my nurse midwife in probably around March 2014 clearly wasn't really thinking about my plan when she just inquired very kindly about this wound that she saw while she was doing my breast exam. She's like, "This is weird. What's that?" And I was like, "Oh girl, don't worry. I just put some Vaseline. I put my clothes on. Everything's fine." And she kept saying, well, I don't think that's what it's supposed to look like. And I was like, this is how it has looked, and it's gonna be fine, because I don't actually have time. I've got this very specific gap year. We're at, month 2 of this pregnancy. After this pregnancy, like, there's a thing that's happening. I dragged my feet to the dermatology specialists and to, at some point, a breast specialist, and, kind of rolled my eyes through the whole thing. And people were concerned, but also trying to match my nonchalance. And I've often said in medicine, there are usually 2 types of people. There's the person that reads everything in the textbook and they've got everything. Like every diagnosis, they're pretty sure that that's the thing that is the thing. And then there are people like me who, it's nothing. Like some ibuprofen, some Aquaphor, it will be all good. Whatever it is, it'll be fine. And so, I reflect back on that time just as an anecdote. It's not lost on me that at that point I was about 27, 28. To be a young Black woman in this country, in the city of Chicago, and be in such a grace-filled space to have these providers who are actually doting on me and worried, that doesn't match the statistics that we hear. But again, I didn't have time for all that, so it didn't really matter. So that was about March 2014. We fast forward to August of 2015, so almost 2 years later. And I was 6 weeks into my residency. I was on time. I was feeling really good. I had been able to spend some good time at home with my daughter. And my husband walks in doing my Aquaphor Vaseline routine on whatever's happening with this nipple of mine. And he said, hey, I know I'm not the doctor, but I kind of feel like that's not normal. And my response to him literally was, I don't have time for this. It's fine. I've figured out how it works. Sometimes it's a problem, sometimes it's not. It goes away, it comes back, it's gonna be fine. And he was just kind of so irritating that finally, I was like, well, if I just make this doctor's appointment, will you stop asking me about it? Because I'm on this inpatient rotation. He said, yes, make the doctor's appointment, I won't ask anymore. So when I got a call at 9 p.m. of the day that I had that doctor's appointment with the surgeon, when your surgeon's calling you at 9 p.m. the same day, it's never gonna be good news, right? And he said that it's cancer, is the short version. It's cancer, and we need to kind of launch into this whole thing. Literally, the first thought that came to mind was, I don't have time for this. I don't have time for this. This is gonna throw me and everything so off course. And then went the kind of parade of launching into chemo and getting really sick and a mastectomy, and then not being able to do reconstruction, so then having to figure out a scar and get measured for a prosthesis. And I was just kind of going. I was just going through it. I will say here that usually this part in the story, I typically explain about how I was 6 weeks into residency. And so similar to any job, I wasn't fully covered by health benefits. What that meant was unless I was working to some degree, I would not have my insurance coverage to cover the very treatment that I needed. So GME and my residency worked out some way for me to work a little bit. So I was sort of 2 weeks on, 1 week off, doing this thing, go into chemo, get sick, come back in. And when I'm telling the non-vulnerable way of the story, we start talking about the system and how terrible insurance was. But the vulnerable part of the story is my ability to work was a balm to my fear, right? Because it felt like I'm doing and I can keep moving. And that's what I did. And moving through cancer actually probably wasn't even the hardest part. It was in the still that happened after treatment. The painful, despairing difficulties that happened after treatment. By God's grace, we got through chemo, we got through mastectomy, I went into recovery, but then I started to spiral because I didn't feel well. I felt very dizzy. There was this identity thing that I was wrestling with. I hadn't really paused to figure out cancer. Oh yeah, and I did still have, that 8-month-old and my 3-year-old in the background. And I was anxious and I was worried. And my program director kept saying, maybe you need to take time. And I said, I can't take time. I'm already off course. I'm already off course because I have a plan and I need to finish. And it got bad. It got really, really, I remember specifically, and the story always sticks out because I was in such a dizzy state of mind that one day, and I did my residency at the University of Chicago. I must have, because I don't actually remember. All I remember is getting to work, but then I remember coming back out 12, 13, 14 hours later, and my car door was open with the keys in it. It was off, but my car was just sitting there. So something happened in there between my exhaustion, between my frustration, my sadness, like something happened there where I just left my car. I just walked out and just went about my business. And as if that wasn't enough to just be in this despairing place that I didn't want to actually have to identify with, you know, in residencies when we have to take our step 3, I actually was really trying to remember. I don't remember how many times I had to take it. I took it once. I took it once, actually, 1 month after I came back from my mastectomy, and I failed it. I was like, ooh, cancer, okay, whatever, we'll do it again. And then I said, I'm giving myself 3 months. And I took it again, and then I failed it. And then I honestly don't remember if it was the 4th or the 5th time, but it was tragic. And frankly, I don't know that between all of those times I studied any harder or any better. I think at some point I was like, okay, Lord, okay. This is it. Like, I actually don't have it left. Now I am ready to kind of relinquish control. Because I wasn't ready when, you know, there are questions in here that I choose not to dwell on. Questions about if I would have taken it more seriously 2 years later, would have not have metastasized, and I would have had to have a mastectomy. The questions of if I would have just given myself more time, would have I had 3 failures on my record of step 3? I don't know, maybe. But what I do know is it brought me to this place of just being ready to say, okay, Lord, this is just gonna go how you need it to go, and just tell me what I'm supposed to do next. And so that story has come up for me, and I think about fear because it just embodies everything about me and the things that I'm still working on, the difficulties I'm still working on, as I learn how to work through fear. Because I don't know that it's ever been necessarily, I wish I could say it where, I don't know that it's ever been an absence of it, but this learning to really kind of like relinquish control despite it.
Thank you. Alejandra, I think we'll ask a little bit. I'm going to set this one up a little bit because my failure had something to do with this thing. And so when Rick asked about the plenary, and we had this idea that, you know, we're going to have this panel, and it's going to be this amazing panel with people that are going to talk about their own experiences, and they're going to be very different, and yet we're going to find overlaps, and we're going to figure out, you know, how God shows up in these places, and how it's similar, and then how it's not similar. And so we're going to do this. And so the person that was on my heart was Alejandra, who I had known from the board, and I had known because I'd seen her up here on stage praying. And so I texted her, and I said, Alejandra, do you have some time to talk to me? I want to ask you a question. And she immediately responded. And then 10 weeks later, I reached out to her and said, are you still available? And she said, I am, right now. And so I called her. And so I started off with an apology. I said, look, I texted you 10 weeks ago. I'm so sorry. I mean, this is typical, right, of me dropping the ball again. And here I am. But we've been asked to talk about, to do this thing on the stage. And it's about fear not. And I wonder if you have an experience with that, and if you would be willing to come up on stage and talk about that. And I'm really sorry it took me 10 weeks to respond.
Hello? Ooh. I'm glad it did. You texted me 10 weeks before you called me, and I was just kind of like, why is he texting me? That's weird. And then you called exactly at the time when God needed you to. You called me exactly on time. The day that I received the second text message from Wayne, I have a little routine I do every morning. I do some coffee, turn on the news, talk to the kids, hurdle the kids, whatever. Anyways, there was a lot going on. Minnesota, there was a lot going on. It was heavy. And if anybody hasn't noticed, I'm Latina. There was a lot going on. I serve a minority, and it was just heavy. I'm driving to work, and I see this young man. He's getting pulled over by ICE, and he just looks so scared. He's about my daughter's age, and he looks so defenseless. There were like 8 ICE vehicles around him, and I was just like, really? Is that necessary? Like, what are we doing? So at that point, like, my heart just starting to get heavy. So I'm going to work, and it's an admin day, so I'm not in a rush. I'm taking my time, and as I'm getting off the highway, I see another car, and I see ICE, and it was just heavy. It was just heavy. And then I get to work, and I remember getting a phone call. So as an interpreter, I work with different lawyers, and I'll do depositions with them. We'll walk clients through whatever it is that they're navigating, and making sure that they understand the legal system, making sure that they understand what they're signing. Anyway, so this lawyer says, like, hey, it looks like there's this bill that's trying to be passed, and we want to just go ahead and wrap up what we're doing, and we're going to put a pause on the people that we're going to help for now until we figure out what's going on. And then I just kind of lost it. I just started crying, and I just thought, oh, God, what do I do? What do you want me to do? What do I do? And background, I go to a church that's a bilingual church. We have a pastor. His name is Pastor Mark Youngblood. He's a black pastor. He brings that energy, and it's kind of like I have my own James Brooks in Oklahoma City. And I'm just like, hey, I'm gonna need to communicate with my pastor, because I need to know how to pray, because I don't know. I'm just crying. I'm like literally ugly crying. Like I can't see, I can't hear, I can't think. My head hurts. I'm crying out like I want to throw up from the fear that is going through my body. So I'm gonna read you an email, the gist of it at least. I emailed Mark, and I said, hey, I'm reaching out to you in the spirit of humility. My heart is heavy. My spirit is broken. My soul is tired. I need prayer. The Lord tells me not to worry about tomorrow, for tomorrow will worry about itself. Yet I'm not disciplined enough to let go of the worry. When my humanness takes over, it cripples me in fear. In my walk with the Lord, I've heard his voice tell me and command me to love my neighbor, and I actively seek opportunities to do so. I've felt his spirit lead me to places where hope has been depleted and even lost, and share his gospel. He has called me to encourage others to be a voice of hope and to be known by love, and even with multiple detours in my route, it's what I keep doing. Today, as I read the gut-wrenching details behind SB 1554, I can no longer hold in the tears, and I don't have words to express the amount of emotion traveling through my body at this moment. I want to cry out to God, but I don't have words. I think of Jeremiah 29, and I pray for our city. I pray for our nation. And I believe that he has plans for me and that I'm on the path that he wants me to be. But I'm scared. I am terrified. I need prayer. I need direction from God. Could you please teach me how to pray? So that was me pouring out to my pastor. And then he responded. He actually responded pretty quick. I asked permission to share this, okay? He said, my heart goes out to you, but I am also learning how to navigate prayer in this environment. And I was just, I'm an interpreter, okay? So my interpretation of this was like, my pastor said he didn't know how to pray. What? What do you mean I'm learning how to navigate? No, that's not words I don't know. So I am just mind blown, and I'm staring at my computer and I'm like, well, what was the point of that? And then I get a text message from this white man. I get a text message from this white man saying, hey, can I talk to you? And asking me if I'm scared and if I want to share about being scared. And one thing that he said to me, he said, I'm sorry, I should have called you about 10 weeks ago. And I said, no, you called me when God needed you to call me. And then another thing that he said is, God's got your back. And I know that didn't resolve the fear. The world was not fixed with that phone call, but God had you call. God helped me through you. Other than that, I was losing hope. Thank you.
So, to summarize, God can use white old men to do his...
Come on.
Hey, can we just name a few things? The church, CCHF, thank God for the women who are here doing this work, because we know, just count just the numbers, that's who's doing the majority of work. So I am so thankful to you all, and I'm thankful. I also want to give a shout out to the staff too. I know this is sort of a digression, but wow, what a privileged place we're in right now. But thank you for helping me outlive, sort of overcome the guilt of not calling you. It was a moment though. We were having a good old cry. It was something, because to me, what you were saying is I've asked for, because she had just sent that email an hour before I called her, just an hour, and she said, I am afraid. And I said, and I didn't know that, of course, and I said, are you experiencing fear? Have you? And she just started laughing. She said, you are not going to believe this. And then she read me that email, and then we cried, because that was God showing up for us. Daniel Song. I've known Daniel Song since about 2013, when he sent an email about the possibility we have this gap year internship. And I remember seeing Daniel's application. In fact, some people warned me. They said, are you really going to think about hiring him? And I said, what's wrong with it? And they said, we put his SAT score on his resume. I said, maybe if I had that SAT score, I'd have put it on my resume too. So, but Daniel from California, most recently at the time, and then it was at Princeton, and so this is about 2013, and at the time, not that we care, Dr. Barron, but Princeton was rated the top school in the country. So here you got this kid at the top school in the country, and so the way this thing works is, the way it works for the Rhodes Scholarship, right, like the most well-known scholarship in the world, is that these schools, the fancy ones, they vet you, and then they pick people, and then you have to represent a region. So the toughest region, the most competitive region, is New York, and so Daniel manages to get himself in the seat in the #1 undergraduate school in the nation as their representative to go compete for the Rhodes Scholarship in New York City for the state of New York. So I'm gonna let you take it from there.
So yeah, this is the story of that senior year and how God was leading me through a journey to die to myself, actually. Before I get to the story of what happened with the Rhodes Scholarship, I did want to say I entered college actually knowing that I wanted to be a doctor, and I thought that actually maybe I wanted to do missions. That was the purpose that I carried with me going into college. What's funny is throughout the 4 years of being at Princeton, somehow that morphed slowly. And I like to say, you know, idols actually, they don't just pop up, they kind of creep. And throughout those 4 years, that original mission of wanting to serve possibly abroad through medicine morphed into, oh, I want to study health policy, and I want to become a big name, an expert, and I want to change the world by designing new systems. And actually, a lot of people thought that I was doing good work, and that's why they nominated me to become a representative for the Rhodes Scholarship in the New York region. So I kind of got on this path, like, oh, maybe God is, calling me to be an academic physician with maybe an expertise in health policy. So I'm going to the actual Rhodes Scholarship interview, and the way it works is it's a 2-day event. The first day, it's a cocktail event where they just basically, they wine and dine you. You're meeting all these people, other applicants from the region. There's 12 of us. And you're also meeting who will be your judges the next day, and the judges are people who have won the Rhodes Scholarship in the past, are now doing whatever thing in their field. So these are, you know, chief editors of magazines, these are managing partners in law firms, professors, incredibly accomplished people. So you're meeting all these people on the first day, and the second day, what happens is you get all placed in a room, in an office, in a big building, all of the applicants, the 12 of us. Then you get called into a different room where all the panelists are sitting one by one, and you complete an interview for 30 minutes, then you come back to the waiting room, you stay there for the whole day, and at the end of the day, they tell you who wins the scholarship right there. So it becomes my turn. I go into the next room, I see the panelists sitting around the table, and they go one by one asking me different questions about my application, my work, what I was hoping to do. And then all of a sudden, the last guy at the table asks his question, and he says, hey, if you had to sacrifice the last 3 years of your life to get this scholarship, would you do it? And to me, that was such a shock moment, and I didn't know how to answer that question. Maybe I thought, actually, was he testing my resolve? So I actually answered yes. Came away from the room, back into the waiting room. The day ends. They all come back to the panelists come back to the waiting room, and they announce the winner. Surprise, it's not me. But I remember, so that was in New York. I mean, there was you had to take a train ride back about an hour and a half to Princeton's campus. And the whole train ride, I didn't listen to any music. I didn't look at any. I didn't read any books. I was just replaying that question over and over again, and how I answered that question. And all I kept coming back to was how far I had come from where I had started before college. And just wondering to myself, how did I end up here? Because there's really two reasons why I would have said what I said in that moment. One, maybe I actually did believe that I would sacrifice the last 3 years of my life for that scholarship, in which case, man, am I willing to compromise so much for this thing that I didn't even know existed, and now it's become an idol? And the other reason I would have answered that question is just maybe I lied, but I was just trying to impress those people, and honestly, that's not necessarily better. And so in those weeks and months afterwards, I remember just kind of coming to face with who I had become after the 4 years of college, and just really searching for where God was taking me next.
But Daniel, you grew up in the church, and we know that our God is a God of second chances. Amen? Come on, people. Come on, I need it. At Princeton, did I say it was at the time the #1 school in the country? They have this thing called the Sachs Scholarship. The Sachs Scholarship. It's their equivalent of the Rhodes Scholarship. They give it to one undergraduate, and they send that one undergraduate to Oxford. And so guess who's a finalist now for the Sachs Scholarship at Princeton? Our God is a God of second chances.
Well, so before I get to the Sachs Scholarship, in that waiting period, actually, and I did a lot of praying, found myself in the university chapel where no one goes, and I would just sit there for an hour, 2 hours, just in silence, doing those reflections. And in those weeks, somehow, by serendipity, it's just crazy how God works. God drops the knowledge of this clinic out in Chicago on the west side called Lawndale, where doctors are neighbors with their patients. It had been born out of this church. And God used an alumnus of Princeton to let me know that there's actually a gap year internship that was available. And I'd be working for this guy, Wayne Detmer. So I learned about Lawndale and the fact that this internship existed in between. And then I get to, at the same time, I was running through the process of being the finalist for the Sachs Scholarship. So I get to the Sachs Scholarship. I'm doing the interview. It's similar. There's a panel. They're asking you questions. And this time, I'm like crushing the interview. I get the sense that maybe I actually might get this thing. And then all of a sudden at the end, the last guy on the panel asks me, okay, now we just need to know, if you get this scholarship, you have to commit. We have to hear from you that you're going to follow through on this scholarship if you were to be the winner. And I just remember in those microseconds before I had to answer the question, everything just kind of blurred. And I remembered what happened with the Rhodes Scholarship. I remembered all the work that God was doing in my heart in between. And I remembered this idea of Lawndale and why it was such a seed in my brain, like how I couldn't let it go. And I wanted the chance to be able to apply to Lawndale, and I just couldn't bear myself to say no. And so everything kind of zooms back in, and I actually tell the panelists, hey, no, I can't promise you that I would take the scholarship if I got it, because...
What does the guy say? He says, you know what this means.
Well, he was flabbergasted, because in his mind, that question was just a formality. And he expected to say yes, and he just couldn't believe it. And he looked at me and he said, well, you know what that means, right? You're putting yourself out of the running. And mind you, I had nothing in the bag with Lawndale. I had started the conversations with Lawndale, but I didn't have a job. I didn't have any guarantees that I would end up there. And in fact, you didn't answer for another few months. But I think really in that moment, it was that panelist asking me that question, but I felt it as if God was asking me that question and giving me the choice again. And I didn't know what I was doing, but I felt like I had to be honest. And if I had to be honest, I wanted to have the chance of being at Lawndale, not because of just what Lawndale is and meant, but because I knew it was almost like God was putting me to the test What do you really desire? What's really important to you? And so I said no in that moment to the panelist. But I got to say, I walked away from having said that, not like, oh my gosh, that felt so good. I felt so terrible. I came away just shaking. And actually, I ran into a friend of mine on my way back to my dorm room, and he saw how weird I was, and he was like, what's going on? And I told him everything I just did, and instead of getting comforted, he was like, dude, what did you just do? You're stupid. But the thing is, because I took that leap of faith, and eventually I ended up getting the internship, and I land on the west side of Chicago between 2013 to 2014, and it changed my life forever. And I am so glad God used that moment to change me, honestly, because I needed to change, and to prepare me for the work that I would eventually do as a doctor, because I don't think I could have done the work that I do now without the transformation that I had gone through in that year. And I will say, the one thing that I took away from that year is, everything up until that point, I had implicitly learned that my resume was the most important thing. I had to bring something to the table. I needed to have skills or expertise. And you say that's all for the kingdom, right? To give back to God. But you come to Lawndale, you walk the streets of Chicago and Ogden Avenue, and nobody cares what you have on your resume. All they care about is the conversation that you're having. Are you a neighbor to them? Are you a friend? Are you a brother to them? And I just learned to let go of so many of the things that I had held on to so tightly. And it was such a freedom. And I think God was teaching me, before you become a doctor for people, learn to be a friend, learn to be a neighbor to people. Learn to actually relate with people that are completely different from you, that don't have anything similar in their backgrounds to you. And that was the work that God was doing in my heart in that year, and that's the work that God needed to do in that year before I moved on to medical school.
Thank you. So our time is short. We have a little bit of time, but I'd like to just come back then and say, in the months that we've been meeting together every week, what has God taught us in this community that we formed here of hope? What have we learned about fear, the nature of fear, how God shows up in these places, and how do we hold these things when many of us, even here, might be experiencing fear? What have we learned from each other?
I was talking in our earlier session just about how important it is to be able to say it out loud, because in saying it out loud, you allow the possibility to invite people in. And this community that we've created over the past 2 months, we shared stories with each other of things that had already happened. But it's something about finding these spaces that resonate in the now anyway. Things like, oh, you had to get broken too. I wasn't the only one that the only way I got here was getting super, super broken. And the gift and the grace that it was that God could meet us in there. It's like, it was such a strong reminder that you had to get broken, but then God was able to build you up, because the way I see you right now, the way I see you, Alejandra, the way I see you, Daniel, right? The way I see you is these beautiful, just vessels of God's love and his purpose. And I hear that story, and it just sounds like how amazing these parts of your quilt, right? How amazing these threads of your fabric. And knowing how I felt in the moments when I was in my space, I know that it doesn't feel like beautiful threads. But to like sit here with each other and see in you, like, man, but look at that beautiful thing, that beautiful design that God made in and through your brokenness. And I would even argue the brokenness that you needed to be able to do this beautiful thing is such a strong reminder of me that I don't have to be so afraid of getting it wrong or misstepping or being vulnerable or feeling tainted. I don't know. Because God is working to make this beautiful thing, and maybe there might just be a chance that it might not be as beautiful if I can't get through, if I don't go through this very fear-filled, broken moment. And that has been such a gift to me in these past couple months.
Yeah, I think similarly, I just learned from sharing our stories that, oftentimes we want to offer up God what is, what's good and what's perfect. But the scripture talks about how even our most righteous deeds are like rags to him, right? And actually what God might desire from us is exactly that, like brokenness and being empty. Because only when we lose our power, we get to see how God moves individually and in each other and in our community. And it was just a strong reminder to me how much God sees us in those moments where we feel like we have nothing left. And actually God uses what seems so little and seems so weak to remind us of how powerful he is and how the kingdom is breaking forth all the time.
Thank you. I'm going to let Alejandra close us out here, but I want to also mention one thing that we talked about. It hasn't come up, but what we've also learned, what we're not saying about fear. We're not saying that if you just have enough faith, right? There are a lot of things I don't understand. There are a lot of things that we don't understand about fear, about why God allows suffering of the innocents. So let's hold on to the things that we can understand. And what we can understand is what we learned from the church that Jocelyn talked about, the persecuted church. We can learn that we're not alone. That Dr. O said it in one of our meetings. She said one of the things that we came to realize is that God knows. The crazy thing is God knows us fully. He knows all of our brokenness, and we are seen by God, and we are loved. And so no matter what it feels like on the outside, the devil's trying to take us out, but God sees us. Brooks and the singers sang songs. We are not alone. That's it. So I want to ask Alejandra to close us out by saying, if there was one thing you want to share with this group that we've learned, what would that be?
Community is so important. Being here is so important. Gathering, sharing your story. Stories don't have to be the same. They don't even have to be on the same topic. Fear is fear, but we serve a God that protects us and that gives us winks through phone calls and text messages. There's somebody here tonight that might be fearful. There's somebody here tonight that might need a phone call. And had it not been for the CCHF community, I would not have met you. You would not have had my number. Had it not been for Steve bringing us together and saying, hey, you need to be on the board. That's my thing, being obedient, answering that call, and knowing that you are in a safe space here and you are in a community of people that love you. And He's not going to take away the fear and everything's going to be, sunshine and rainbows because you cry out or because somebody from CCHF called you, but he is going to calm the fear. That's important. Community is my biggest takeaway. And I know that this has been a pretty heavy weekend. We've, talked about a lot of things, and I know that there's someone in this audience that is needing prayer, that is needing community, that is needing just to have hands laid on. And our board members are going to come up to the front, and we would love to pray for you guys. We would love to honor this moment by just pouring love into you. Please, if I could have our board come forward.